Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. When I, 25F, was 3, my grandparents passed away in early 2002. They set up a savings account in my name that was meant to be accessed when I turned 21. By then, it contained just over $300K. My grandparents left me a letter explaining they wanted me to share the money fairly with any other Miller-Thompson children, meaning my full siblings. Dad's a Miller, Mom's a Thompson. The letter emphasized that fairly meant I should assess the situation and judge for myself what constituted fair distribution. I never had full siblings, but I have 2 half-brothers, Ryan and Alex Miller, from dad and stepmom. Because of my grandparents' specific wording, I wasn't legally obligated to give Ryan or Alex any money, but I've always considered them my brothers. And since the money came from our grandparents, I thought the fairest approach would be to give each of us $100K. My plan was that when Ryan, the youngest, turned 21, we'd split any remaining funds. "Listen, Emma," Dad said when I turned 21 in 2020, "you should invest in property with your share." I found a perfect house, but it was $130K, and no bank would give me a mortgage. "Why don't you borrow the extra $30K from the account?" Dad suggested. "You can pay it back before your brothers need their shares." It seemed reasonable, so I did. I've been consistently repaying it since then. The account should currently have $208K, but due to my withdrawal and repayments, it's at $195K. I still owe $13K. When Alex turned 21 last month, I was transferring his $100K when he noticed the discrepancy. "What happened to the rest of the money?" he demanded. I explained about the house and assured him, "I'll have it all replaced before Ryan turns 21. Alex immediately told Ryan, and they both confronted me in our family group chat. "You basically stole from us," Ryan wrote. "You owe us the $13K plus $3K in lost interest. And we want it by this summer," Alex added. "No excuses." That gave me less than 6 months to bring the account up to $211K. "I'll repay it," I replied, "but over 2 years as I planned." They drafted a contract, but when I read it, the timeline said 6 months. "I won't sign this," I told them. "We agreed on 2 years." "Figure it out," Ryan snapped. "It's our money. We're getting legal advice." Later that day, I received their amateur attempt at a legal email, threatening to sue me for the $16K, the remaining account balance, plus additional damages and emotional distress. I'd only given Alex about $50K of his $100K so far, as he'd requested installments. I emailed back, "Legally, you were never entitled to any of this money. Given your attitudes, I'd say you've already received what I deem fair. The $50K is all you're getting." The barrage of messages was immediate. "You can't do this. You're stealing from us. We had a deal." I blocked them all. Then they took to social media. Their posts about me stealing their inheritance got our extended family involved. But among all the harassment messages, I received an intriguing DM from someone named James Miller, claiming to be my 27-year-old half-brother. "I have proof," he wrote, sending photos of himself as a kid with our dad, grandparents, and me. He showed me documentation of his own account containing $150K, along with a scanned letter from our grandparents specifying this money was for Dad's non-marital children. James also revealed we have another half-sister who's 18. A consultation with my lawyer confirmed everything. Ryan and Alex, being legitimate children, had no claim to James's fund, and as half-siblings, they weren't entitled to my Miller-Thompson fund either. I sent them a formal cease and desist letter. "Stop the online harassment, the $50K is final." The day they received it, James forwarded me a message from Dad. "Any chance the boys could get some of your fund?" James refused and told Dad we'd met. With his permission, I informed Ryan and Alex about James and our other half-sister. It turns out our grandparents, aware of James before their death, had created 2 separate funds. One for children from Dad's marriage to my mom, his wife when they died, and another for children from his affairs, presumably to prevent any inheritance disputes. The aftermath has been messy. Ryan's furious because Alex has the $50K and won't share. Their mom, my stepmom, apparently didn't know about the other half-siblings, or that my half-sister was conceived during her marriage to Dad. She's kicked him out to a hotel, and from what I hear, she's filing for divorce. "Please reconsider," Dad keeps texting me. "You're tearing the family apart." But I'm done with all of them, except James and my sister. Sometimes doing what's right means standing your ground, even when it gets ugly. The next one is an entitled people story. I've been a police officer for about 8 years now, and I've seen my fair share of entitled people, but this incident really takes the cake. It happened last summer while I was working my regular patrol shift in a busy shopping district downtown. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was standing outside a popular coffee shop keeping an eye on things. I'd just gotten a call over my police radio about a shoplifting incident a few blocks away, so I was waiting for more details before heading over. As I'm standing there, this woman, let's call her Karen, approaches me with her son, who looked about 12 or 13. The kid was playing some game on his phone, but it seemed to be dying based on how frantically he was tapping at it. Karen marches right up to me and says, "Excuse me, my son needs to use your phone." I was a bit taken aback. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I can't help you with that." She points to my police radio attached to my shoulder. "Don't lie to me. I can see your phone right there. My son's battery is about to die, and he needs to finish his game." I try to explain, "Ma'am, this isn't a phone. It's a police radio. I use it to communicate with dispatch and other officers." Her face turns red. "Don't be ridiculous. I know what a phone looks like. You're just being selfish. You're supposed to serve the public." By this point, several people had stopped to watch the scene unfold. I maintain my professional demeanor and say, "Ma'am, this is official police equipment. I cannot and will not hand it over to your son." "Let me speak to your supervisor," she demands, pulling out her own phone. "I'm going to record this. You're discriminating against my son." "Ma'am, I'd be happy to call my supervisor using this police radio, which again is not a phone, but I should warn you that making false complaints against an officer is a serious matter." Her son, looking mortified, tugs at her sleeve. "Mom, that's actually a police radio. Can we just go?" But Karen wasn't having it. "No, honey, this officer is lying. It's clearly a phone and he's just being difficult. I pay his salary with my taxes." I decide to demonstrate. I press the talk button and say, "Unit 247 to dispatch, be advised I'm currently dealing with a civilian situation at 5th and Main." The radio crackles to life. "Copy that, 247. Do you need assistance?" Karen's face goes from red to white in seconds. A small crowd had gathered by now, and I could hear several people snickering. But instead of backing down, she doubles down. "Well, that's obviously just an app you have on your phone. My son needs it more than you do right now. You can use the radio in your patrol car." I take a deep breath. "Ma'am, let me be very clear. This is not a phone. It is a police radio that I use for official police business. If your son needs to charge his phone, there's a coffee shop right behind us that has charging stations. How dare you suggest I pay for overpriced coffee just to charge my son's phone? This is harassment." At this point, my radio crackles again. 247, what's your status on that shoplifting call?" The timing couldn't have been better. "Ma'am, I need to respond to this call. If you'd like to file a complaint, you can do so at the police station. Have a nice day." But as I start to walk away, she actually reaches for my radio, trying to grab it off my shoulder. I step back quickly. "Ma'am, do not touch my equipment. That's assault on a police officer, and I will arrest you if you try that again." Her son is practically in tears now. "Mom, please stop. You're embarrassing me." A bystander who'd been watching speaks up. "Lady, are you crazy? That's obviously a police radio. Leave the officer alone." Karen finally seems to realize she's fighting a losing battle. Her face is now a shade of purple I didn't think was possible for human skin. She grabs her son's arm and starts dragging him away, but not before shouting, "I'm going to report you. This isn't over." I call after her, "Ma'am, if you'd like my badge number, I'm happy to provide it." This gets a laugh from the crowd. As she storms off, I hear her son say, "Mom, I told you it was a radio. Why don't you ever listen to me?" I thought that would be the end of it, but oh boy was I wrong. About an hour later, while I'm finishing up paperwork on the shoplifting incident, I get a call from my sergeant. Apparently, Karen had actually gone to the police station to file a complaint. She'd told them I was hoarding department resources and refusing to help a child in need. My sergeant, who's dealt with his fair share of entitled people, had to explain to her in very simple terms that police radios are essential emergency equipment and that no officer would ever be required or allowed to hand them over to civilians. He also had to explain that making false complaints could result in charges against her. But Karen wasn't done yet. She demanded to know my name and badge number, which I would have given her if she'd asked at the scene, and threatened to go to the media about how the police department was mistreating children. My sergeant, bless him, had the perfect response. "Ma'am, if you'd like to go to the media, we'll be happy to provide them with the body camera footage of the incident. I'm sure they'd be very interested in seeing you try to grab essential emergency equipment from an on-duty officer." That finally shut her up. She left the station in a huff, but not before demanding to know where she could file a complaint against my sergeant too. The next day, I came into work to find the story had spread through the entire department. My fellow officers couldn't stop laughing about the phone lady, as she came to be known. One of them even made a meme about it for our internal message board. But the story doesn't end there. A few days later, I was working the same beat when I saw Karen and her son again. This time, though, the son approached me alone while his mother pretended to window shop several stores away. "I'm really sorry about my mom," he said. "She's always like this, and it's so embarrassing. I tried to tell her it was a radio, but she never listens to me." I felt bad for the kid. It couldn't be easy having a mother like that. "It's okay," I told him. "It's not your fault, but maybe you could show her some videos about police equipment so she learns the difference?" He laughed. "I already did. I made her watch like 10 YouTube videos about police radios when we got home. She still insists it looked just like a phone, but at least she admitted she might have been wrong." I had to admire the kid's patience. "That's very mature of you," I told him. "And hey, for what it's worth, there's a free charging station in the public library just 2 blocks from here. Much better than asking cops for their radios." He grinned and headed back to his mother, who quickly ushered him away when she saw him talking to me. As they walked away, I could hear him trying to convince her to go to the library. The incident became somewhat of a legend in our department. Whenever a new officer joins, someone inevitably tells them about the Karen who thought police radios were phones. We even had to add a section to our public relations presentations explaining the difference between police equipment and civilian technology, though we don't mention the specific incident that prompted it. The story took an interesting turn about a month later when I was called into my captain's office. Apparently, Karen had escalated her complaint all the way to the city council. She'd written a lengthy email demanding that all police officers be required to carry spare phones for public use in emergencies. She'd even started a Facebook group called Police Reform for Public Phone Access, which, thankfully, only had about 7 members, mostly her immediate family. The captain could barely keep a straight face as he showed me the email. "She's actually done us a favor," he said. "We've been trying to get funding for a public education program about police equipment and emergency services. This is the perfect example of why we need it." And that's exactly what happened. The department used Karen's complaint, with all names redacted, of course, as part of a proposal for a community education initiative. We got the funding, and now we regularly host Know Your Police Department sessions at local schools and community centers, where we explain our equipment, procedures, and why certain rules exist. The best part? Karen's son attended one of these sessions with his school class. I was one of the officers presenting that day, and when he saw me, he gave me a knowing smile. During the presentation, he asked some really intelligent questions about police communication systems, and I could tell he was genuinely interested. After the presentation, he hung back to talk to me. "Mom still hasn't lived this down," he told me. "My dad heard about it during custody negotiations, and now I spend more weekends with him. He actually listens when I talk." It turned out that Karen's entitled behavior had been a factor in her recent divorce, and this incident was just one of many examples that had been brought up during custody hearings. Her ex-husband, unlike Karen, was apparently a reasonable person who understood the difference between phones and police equipment. The son, whose name was Jason, as he finally introduced himself, told me that the incident had actually led to some positive changes in his life. His mom had been forced to attend parenting classes as part of the custody agreement, and while she was still Karen-ish in many ways, she'd at least learned to listen to him more. "She even apologized to me the other day," Jason said. "Not to you, obviously. She still says you were rude to her, but she admitted she should have listened when I told her it was a radio." I considered that progress, even if it was small. "That's good to hear," I told him. "Sometimes people need a wake-up call to realize their behavior isn't acceptable." The whole incident even made it into our police academy training as an example of how to handle difficult civilians without escalating the situation. The body camera footage is now used to teach new officers about maintaining professionalism in the face of unreasonable demands. As for me, I still patrol the same area, and I occasionally see Karen and Jason. Karen usually hurries to the other side of the street when she spots me, which honestly makes my job easier. Jason always waves when he sees me, and sometimes stops to chat about his interest in law enforcement. Turns out the incident sparked a genuine curiosity about police work. Last week, he told me he's joining the Police Explorers program when he turns 14. "I want to learn everything about police work," he said, "especially the communication systems." He gave me a mischievous grin. "You know, so I can explain it to Mom if she ever gets confused again." The incident taught me a lot about patience, professionalism, and the importance of community education. It also showed me that sometimes the most entitled parents can have the most level-headed kids. Jason's ability to remain rational and even learn from his mother's embarrassing behavior gives me hope for the next generation. And yes, our department did eventually install several public phone charging stations outside the police station. Not because of Karen's demands, but because it was actually a good idea to help people in genuine need. We'd just make sure to keep them far away from our radio equipment, just in case any other Karens come around trying to borrow police communication devices for their kids' gaming needs. The story has become such a part of our department's culture that during last year's police charity auction, someone donated an old decommissioned police radio with a plaque that read, "Not a phone, Karen-proof." It raised quite a bit of money for our youth outreach programs and now sits proudly in our break room as a reminder that sometimes the most frustrating encounters can lead to positive changes, and you know what? I wouldn't change how any of it happened. Sure, it was annoying at the time, but it led to better community education, helped a kid develop an interest in law enforcement, and gave us all a story we'll never forget. Plus, I've never had another person try to grab my radio, though I did have someone ask if they could use my body camera to take a selfie, but that's a story for another day. Update: 6 months later. I wanted to share an interesting update about what happened with Jason and Karen. A lot has changed since the initial incident, and I think you'll all appreciate how things turned out. First off, Jason did join the Police Explorers program, and he's absolutely thriving. He's actually become one of our star participants, and his knowledge of police communication systems is impressive. He even helped develop a presentation for other explorers about emergency communication equipment. And yes, he made sure to include a very clear section about why police radios are not phones. As for Karen, well, she's gone through quite a transformation. It started when Jason's school invited parents to attend a special Day in the Life of Law Enforcement program that our department runs. Karen initially refused to come, but Jason convinced her by telling her it would look good in future custody discussions. During the program, Karen was paired with my sergeant, the same one who had dealt with her complaint, for a ride-along simulation. To everyone's surprise, she actually paid attention and asked reasonable questions. The turning point came when we demonstrated our emergency response protocols, and she finally understood why police equipment can't be treated like civilian devices. After the program, she approached me, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else, and actually apologized. "I was wrong about the radio," she admitted. "And I was wrong to try to grab it. I was just frustrated about my son's phone, and I took it out on you." I appreciated her honesty and told her so. She then revealed that the parenting classes she'd been required to take had helped her recognize her entitled behavior patterns. "I used to think everyone else was the problem," she said. "Now I realize I was teaching Jason all the wrong lessons." The real surprise came last month. Our department was organizing a community fundraiser for new youth program equipment, and guess who volunteered to help? Karen. She's actually become one of our most active parent volunteers, though she still turns slightly red whenever someone mentions radios. She's even started a legitimate Facebook group, this time focused on parent-police cooperation and community education. It's got significantly more than 7 members now, and they actually do good work helping bridge the gap between law enforcement and local families. Jason's custody situation has improved too. His parents are now co-parenting more effectively, and he splits his time equally between them. He told me his mom has become much more reasonable about things in general, not just police-related issues. Last week, during a Police Explorers meeting, Jason shared something that made me smile. He said, "You know, that day when my mom tried to take your radio, it was super embarrassing then, but now I'm kinda glad it happened. It changed both of us for the better. The not-a-phone, Karen-proof radio in our break room has become something of a conversation starter. Karen even signed it during our last community event, showing she can now laugh about the whole thing. She added a note that reads, 'Lesson learned, ask for directions to the library instead.' Our community education program has continued to grow, and we've even been contacted by other police departments wanting to implement similar programs. They all get a kick out of hearing the origin story, and Karen's incident has become a case study in how to turn negative encounters into positive community engagement opportunities. As for me, I'm still patrolling the same beat, but now with an interesting addition to my equipment, a small card attached to my radio that reads, 'This is not a phone.' The library is 2 blocks that way. It's gotten a few laughs from people who know the story, and it's actually helped direct several people to the public charging stations. The whole experience has reminded me that sometimes the most difficult situations can lead to unexpected positive changes. Karen went from being our department's cautionary tale to becoming one of our strongest community allies. Jason turned an embarrassing incident with his mother into motivation to pursue his interests in law enforcement. And our department gained valuable insights into the importance of public education and community engagement. I guess sometimes it takes a Karen mistaking a police radio for a phone to bring about real positive change in a community. Who would have thought? Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.